The Mayan calendar is the most accurate calendar ever discovered on Earth. And humanity is intrigued how an ancient tribal people could be so precise, more precise than modern man and all of his technologies. Now humanity is looking to the Maya to understand this date of December 21st, 2012, that is emphasized within the Mayan calendar. And the Maya have responded. What higher source that is more respected than the president of the National Mayan Council of Elders of Guatemala, all 440 Mayan tribes representing this primary leader of the Mayan nation in Mexico, Belize, and Honduras, and Guatemala. His name is Don Alejandro Cerrillo Perez. Today, I will translate into the language of the modern world what the Mayan people themselves have to say about 2012. And if I err, I'm sure the Mayan Council will let both of us know, but they did give me authority to speak. The Maya wish to inform you that the world that you know, that you live within, is not what you think it is. We modern people think that the world is solid and real, and that nothing can change it. It is fixed and will go on for eternity without or without our presence. The Maya wish to inform you that this is not true. The world is really images that can be controlled by consciousness, especially consciousness that is connected directly into the human heart. This is not a normal public broadcast. If you're looking for that, you've come to the wrong place. You are about to enter into a way of being that is only understood by the ancient world. The modern world has almost no idea of what we are about to discuss, and generally, it doesn't even know that it exists. And yet, this way of being is exactly what you, the modern world, need at this moment in history, but you probably don't know it. Humanity is very much in the situation of a butterfly moments before it comes out of its cocoon. Everything it knew is about to change, and a completely new world is about to emerge. Hello, my name is Drunvalo Melchizedek, and you're probably wondering why a white man is standing here authorized to speak for the Mayans. Well, that's going to take a little bit to explain. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to tell you a little bit about my life. And in doing that, I think you'll understand why I'm standing here. Like most people on Earth, when I was young and in my 20s, and sometimes people a lot earlier, want to know why they're here on Earth and what life is all about. And what is this planet and stars and suns? Why are we here? What is really going on? Well, I became so intrigued with this that I began to study, and my first place of study was in college. I went into college and I chose physics and mathematics. Not because I wanted to become a physicist or make money. That wasn't the purpose. I thought that the physicists and the mathematicians must know what the stars and planets are. And I went for years and years studying this until I finally came to the conclusion that they don't know any more about this than I do. I then switched from the left brain to the right brain and began to study art and art history and painting. And I spent another 2 years studying that, and it really helped. I went through 20,000 years of art history, from caveman to modern time, and slowly I began to get an inkling through the female side of the brain of what life was about, but I wasn't even getting close. Time went on, and during this time, while I was going to college, I decided also to go into begin to study meditation. And I did this through beginning with the Hindus. I began to study mantras, and I had a Hindu guru who began to teach me these things, and I became very serious about it. And I sat down and began to study this. Well, one day, while I was deeply in meditation, a phenomena took place in the room where I was. Something I did not expect. I did not ask for it to happen. It just happened. these two spheres of light, roughly this big, two of them came in together, came right up to me on both sides here, about this far away. They were brilliantly bright. One was a beautiful ultraviolet color. The other one was a very bright green color. I didn't know what it was. Two balls of light standing there in my room. And then inside my head, telepathically, I heard these words, "We are not separate from you. We are you on another level of existence." I didn't know what it meant, but it began an inquiry into existence that they began to lead through my life. And in my interaction with the two spheres of light, I was led by them to over 70 spiritual teachers around the world and studied almost every form of spiritual meditation on the planet. But at the same time, the two spheres of light guided me into the indigenous world to begin the understanding of their ancient ways. Then the angels, at one point, or the spheres of light, they are actually angels from their point of view, began to lead me into the indigenous world. And this is where the Mayans come in. They led me to a tribe in New Mexico called the Taos Pueblo. And I spent 14 years with them. One of their teachers there is a man named Tell Us Good Morning. He's now passed on. He was the head of the peyote church for the entire United States. And he took me on and began to teach me. And other members of the Taos Pueblo began to also teach me. One was the actual cacique, or what is called a cacique, which is the spiritual leader of the Taos tribe. And he used to be the chief of the Taos Pueblo. And he taught me about crystals and about fetishes and how you could understand and change the outer reality through the use of crystals and fetishes. A fetish is a stone that you carve into a shape, and if you know how to use it, you can actually change your life in ways that no one would ever believe. But I saw it. I watched it happen. I couldn't deny it. And slowly, they gave me, after 14 years, I had an indigenous training that changed me in ways that prepared me for going out into the world to begin to work with other tribes. The spheres of light then led me into what were called the Anasazi. They were the ancient ones that lived before the Hopi and the Sioux and the Lakota and the Cheyenne and all these other tribes. They were much older. And I found them on other dimensional worlds and began to work with them for a period of time. And then I was led to the Maya. And in 1985, I was directed to go into the Yucatan and to begin to study there and to do ceremony there. I was led into sacred temples such as Uxmal and Labna and Coba and Chichen Itza and Tulum and Cajunlich and Palenque, and even into Guatemala to Tikal. And it was initiation for me. And the Maya watched as I began to work on this level. And slowly after that, a few years later, I met a man named Hunzbatzman, who is a Mayan shaman and Mayan priest, and who is connected with the Grand Itza Mayan Council out of... To begin to explain what I have been speaking of, I will now begin a story that the Maya gave to me to give to you. It moves like a river, turning and changing direction, but always heading to the ocean. It will begin to narrow the gap between the way the ancient world understands and the modern world interprets the sun and the earth and the universe. If you can view what I am saying from your heart and not your mind, you will understand. In July of 2007, Don Alejandro and his wife Elizabeth came to Sedona, Arizona, where I live, to meet with me. They wanted to tell me about some of the Mayan prophecies and to ask for assistance in these prophecies. Why me? Well, I can't really tell you, except that, like I said, I've been working with them for a long time, and I think they trust me. The first thing that Don Alejandro told me was that everything we have read, heard, or seen about the Mayan culture and the Mayan calendar was not approved or written by the Mayan people or any of the councils, and therefore not spoken by the Mayan people. What we have learned from the Mayans has come from the universities and governments and religions and archaeologists and ordinary people like Jose Aguilas, and some of who are Mayan. But to be very clear, the National Mayan Council of Elders of Guatemala, according to Don Alejandro, has not said one word in 527 years. That's a very long time of silence. So you can see why the Maya breaking their silence at this time should be of great importance to the world. And further, everything that we now know about the Maya has to be put aside so we can hear the truth, not a truth made up by outsiders who are simply guessing or are living a consciousness that has almost nothing to do with the Maya. Here's what Don Alejandro told me about the Mayan prophecy of 2012. First of all, he said there is a window of time around this date, December 21st, 2012, the Mayan call the end of time. It is about 7 or 8 years in duration. This window began, as I understand it, on October 24th, 2007. But I have not been told the exact date it would end. But for certain, at this moment, we are all now living in this window called the end of time. Don Alejandro also said that the likelihood that the Mayan prophecy would begin on that date of December 21st, 2012, as most people in the world believe, is extremely unlikely. He simply said it would begin somewhere in the window of the end of time, which means any minute from now, and could begin as late as 2015. This is something that none of the prophecies that the modern world is talking about is saying. And further, to grasp the situation, we have to understand what the date of December 21st, 2012 actually is. And to do that, we must begin by talking about the precession of the equinoxes. For some of you, the Maya are using a cycle of approximately 5,200 years. And if you multiply this number by 5, it equals 26,000 years. And this is the approximate length of the precession of the equinoxes. And the actual cycle that the Mayans are using of 5,200 years is not that number either. It's slightly less. And so on this calendar, there are wheels within wheels taking place here. And all these wheels seem to be moving at different speeds. One of these is the precession of the equinoxes, which we'll explain in detail in a minute. And it comes back around approximately every 26,000 years. These 52,000-year periods are 5 times on here where they don't meet the precession whatsoever, but once every approximately 26,000 years, those two cycles come into perfect alignment. And that's what's happening on December 21st, 2012. So let's take a closer look at time so we can see how this bigger picture emerges, and we can see what the precession of the equinoxes is within this larger picture. Time is an elusive human concept. We look at our watch and say, well, it's 4:32. But most of us forget that this time is connected to the rotation of the Earth, a real thing, not a digital mind thing. We look at the sunrise or the sunset and we think the sun is moving. But really, this motion is an illusion also, as it is still only the rotation of the Earth that is causing this illusion. The same movement that creates our everyday time. The Earth spins one full revolution and we experience a single day. This single cycle is divided into 24 segments, which we call hours. Of course we know this. Everyone knows a day is one revolution of the Earth. The second best known Earth cycle is the journey that the Earth makes around the sun. One cycle around the sun is 1 year, or 365.25 days. Some scientists say it's 365.44 days. And so it is clear that we count time by the movement of the Earth relative to the sun. But there are other movements and cycles within and connected to the Earth that are understood a lot less by most people on Earth. but have as much effect on our everyday lives as the hours we record with our watches. We just don't know it. For example, the angle the Earth's axis is tilted to the sun has an enormous effect upon every human on Earth, which is at this moment about 23.5 degrees and is called the Earth's obliquity. This angle to the sun creates our seasons, our summer, our spring, fall, winter, and it is constantly changing. The axial tilt of the Earth changes from 22.1 degrees to 24.5 degrees over an approximately a 42,000-year period. Now, this is a really long period, and you wouldn't think that it had anything to do with everyday life. But even with this long cycle, astronomers, for example, must take into account this changing tilt of the Earth's axis on a daily basis as they explore the universe with their computerized telescopes. If they don't, they will not be looking at what they think they are supposed to be looking at. They'll end up looking at somewhere else. And even our journey around the sun is not as simple as it seems. The orbital shape called the eccentricity is also constantly changing. Our Earth moves from a near-perfect circle around the sun to an ellipse over time, caused mostly by the gravitational influence of Jupiter and Saturn. This cycle is changing over a very long period of time, about 100,000 years, and interesting enough, it does not change the length of the year as it moves from a circle to an ellipse and back again. And then there is the precession of the equinox, a wobble in the axis of the Earth that has been recently calculated by science in the year 2000 to be exactly 25,771.5 years for the axis to make one complete rotation. Now, if you look at this here, what we're talking about is this is the axis, and it's moving in a wobble. It's moving in a circle. It's not a perfect circle. It's actually a little bit more of an ellipse rather than a circle. And for that to go from one time around, one wobble, takes almost 26,000 years. The cause of this wobble are primarily from the sun and the moon, though other bodies do affect it. The precession of the equinox is also always changing because of something called the Milankovitch cycles. The Milankovitch cycles are the summation of all the Earth cycles and all other cycles that affect the Earth cycles, which appears to be constantly changing. The scientific focus of the Milankovitch cycles has been mostly to study the effects they have on the Earth's climate. Yes, to study the Earth's climate, one has to know the Milankovitch cycles, as well as the sun's solar cycles, another paramount subject on Earth's climate. And then, of course, there is the orbit of the moon, which causes the tidal evolution and, like a clock, determines the high and low tides of our oceans, something that affects every person who moves upon the surface of the oceans, but which affects the Milankovitch cycles as well. These cycles also affect human emotions and millions of biological cycles of all life on Earth, such as the female menstruation patterns. These cycles are the key to everything that we are talking about and to all. And he began to teach me the Mayan way of perceiving the world, which was different than the tribes that I was used to in the United States. And he asked me to begin to do ceremony with him. And for many years, we did ceremony with hundreds of tribes from all over South America that came in. And then in about 2003, the Hunbatsman asked me to come in, and we began to do ceremony in ways that was much, much deeper, involving tribes from all over the world at this point, and where I began to understand their ceremonies and what this meant, because I didn't really understand what ceremony meant at that point. It wasn't until just recently, until 2007, that the actual president of the entire Mayan nation came to me, and we'll speak about that in just a little while. We know that human consciousness is evolving. Science has recorded this evolution over long periods of time and is very aware of it. The Encyclopedia Britannica, it discovered something recently, and I think it was in about the late 80s when this happened. They discovered that if you took all the knowledge that all of humanity had learned since the beginning of our civilization, which is the Sumerians, about 6,000 years ago, and you took everything they learned all the way up into the year 1900, that there were so many bits of information, thinking in terms of computers, there were so many bits of information that we had learned. It was a very large amount of time, 6,000 years. And so we slowly begin to evolve and learn a lot of things. And then the encyclopedia discovered that from the year 1900 to 1950, we learned as many things as we did in the last 6,000 years. That's incredible. In 50 years, we learned as much as we did in 6,000 years. Who would have ever guessed that? And then they discovered that these are approximate dates, they're not precise, that from about 1950 to about 1970, we learned as much as we did in 6,000 years again, instead of 50 years and only 20 years. And then from 1970 to about 1980, we learned again how much we learned in 6,000 years. And it kept speeding up to about 1986 or so. We doubled it again, and it kept going on. And now, in fact, there was a time with NASA when the information was flooding in so fast that they couldn't even put it into their computers. They were about 8 or 9 years behind being able to even get it in. They had to wait until the hardware and the software caught up to their ability to learn. At this point, we are on a straight-up curve. We are learning as much as we learned. I don't know the exact time, but approximately in 1 month, we are learning as much as we have learned in 6,000 years. This seems impossible, but it's fact if you check it out. And so it means that there's a curve. We were slowly evolving, getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and all of a sudden, as we're approaching modern time, we started going up, and it's a straight-up curve right now. What the Mayans say is that we are about to go through a consciousness change, a change of great, I don't even know how to put this in human terms, but it is, we are about to become something brand new, a new species, a new way of perceiving the reality. And that's really what this show is about, is this change in consciousness. Sure, we're going to talk about a lot of other things, but this is what is underneath all of this. When we look back at the ancient cultures, it becomes clear that we humans are now very different than we were, say, 2,000 years ago. That's pretty obvious. Not just our modern techno toys, but different in how we perceive the very reality around us, what we think the reality is, and who we think we are within this. The Mayans say, however, that human consciousness evolution is timed to the cycles of time, similar to how DNA unfolds as it reaches certain chromosomes, and that we are now at this moment approaching a narrow point in time when human evolution speeds up tremendously and makes a jump into a new level of awareness. We become something greater than what is now called human. It is within this understanding that we will return to explain what the Mayan have to say about what we are about to become. And it is within this understanding that we will constantly be referring when we speak about human consciousness changing. So just understand that, because I'm going to keep talking about it. We can't really proceed to understand what the Maya have to say about their prophecy without understanding of how the ancient world perceives ceremony. This is another level of it. We are actually linked together in the Mayan mind. Ceremony to the ancient world was far more than what we in the modern world understand or even begin to grasp. We think that science and logic is the way of this new world we live within. We definitely believe that we are superior to what has come before us, and that technology will eventually make our lives better and more worthwhile. But if you think that technology is going to save you from what Mother Earth is about to bring to humanity, and if the Maya are correct, then you're in for a hard surprise. Like we said in the beginning, life is not what you think it is. And the Sanskrit Vedas, written over 6,000 years ago, it speaks about this time we now live within. It talks about how we learn about electricity and magnetism, and that how we learn to fly in the sky with metal boxes. That's actually a quote. And then on a single day, the Vedas say, we give it all up. Much like a child as it grows older, it lets go of its teddy bear and reaches for a higher vision. We're about to do the same thing. From the Mayan point of view, high technology is not a sign of an advanced civilization. It is a sign of a civilization about to be advanced. What good is technology to a people if they discover that the human body and human consciousness is capable of doing everything that technology is now doing and far, far more? This is what we are about to understand according to the Maya. First of all, the Maya people see and know the earth as a living being and conscious of everything that is occurring on her body. And further, the Maya see that everything in the heavens are living beings that interact with each other. We don't. We just see the earth as a rock. Ceremony is direct communication and a living bond with Great Spirit, Mother Earth, Father Sky, and all life everywhere. From the ancient world, it is understood that before any change in the human world can take place on earth, a ceremony has to be performed first. Ceremony is what links our hearts and the hearts of the earth and the heart of the sun and the heart of the universe and everything and everyone that exists. When the ancient world enters into ceremony, they enter into a sacred world of eternal possibilities. The Maya have predicted that as we approach 2012, humanity will enter into chaos on a very deep level. But you will have no reason for fear. It is not the end, it is the beginning, as you'll soon understand. Is it the end of the cycle of time? Is it the beginning of a new cycle with great beauty and hope? This is what we have to find out. But if we focus on the end of this cycle, as we look back around us, we see that everything in modern times right now are beginning to degenerate and break apart on vast and primal levels, exactly as the Maya had predicted. For example, global warming and the world's environment rapidly approaching a probable ice age that would eliminate most life on Earth. This is a big deal. The world financial system on the verge of total collapse, which we are all struggling with all over around the world. Disease on a global scale, such as AIDS and the H5 virus and many other deadly diseases threatening world pandemics. And about 46 wars globally occurring at this very moment, not just Iraq and Iran Iraq and Afghanistan. There are other wars going on all over the world. And over 2 billion people living on less than $2 a day, with 25,000 children starving to death each and every day we live. And a human population expanding to the point of destroying all life on Earth simply by us existing. I could go on, but your heart knows of what I'm speaking about. The times we live within are precarious, to say the least, for our dear planet and for all life that lives upon her. According to the Maya, all of this chaos was predicted long ago, for we are approaching the end of a very long cycle of time. And when this cycle ends, this chaos always happens. It's part of the cycle of life. It is natural. But the Maya predict that this chaos we are now experiencing is just beginning, that something much greater than anything we are now experiencing is about to appear on Earth. And please understand, the prophecies that are about to be revealed are not just fantasies predicted by the Mayan calendar, for what I'm about to disclose from the Maya is backed up by hardcore modern science, as we will soon show. Once you understand the situation that we are all in, it's time we all listen to what is coming and prepare inwardly. It is not a time to continue to live as though everything is normal, for it is not. And normal, as we now know it, if the Maya are correct, is never going to return again in our lifetime ever. But what replaces the normal reality is far, far greater. So is it the end of modern civilization that so many people believe to be true from the study of the Mayan calendar, which predicts massive global earth changes in 2012? This is exactly what the head of the Mayan nation, Don Alejandro, wants you to understand. Yes, there probably will be earth changes according to the Maya, but there is something else far more important, extremely beautiful and positive, that no one is talking about and most of science is unaware of, and it is this other positive aspect that the Mayans and I want you to be aware of. If this end of this cycle is a human disaster or a blessing for all of humanity, it will depend on humankind, as it was explained to me by not only the Maya, but many other tribes. At a time like this one, where obviously a page in history is being turned and civilization is in crisis, everything depends upon how humanity assimilates all of its known experience, knowledge, and wisdom into a body of awareness that leads humanity into the future. If this future experience is sustainable, then we survive. If it isn't, then we go the way of the dinosaurs and become extinct. It's up to us. We have the power to change our future now. In fact, the here and now is the only place and time possible to make this change. We spoke about this higher consciousness that the Mayans spoke about, and there is a very important understanding or secret, really, to how the trigger that makes this work. And I could put this into a sentence, but the sentence isn't understood by most people when I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, and then I'll come back and explain it more in just a moment. But the secret to how this leap in consciousness is acquired, it has to do with this, that human consciousness, combining the awareness of the ancient world with the awareness of the modern world, creates a new and more evolved human consciousness for both worlds. This is, simply put, we live in two worlds that are separate from each other, the ancient world and the modern world, and we live side by side. But at the same time, these two worlds need each other. They need to understand each other and to absorb each other's knowledge and their wisdom, or neither of these two worlds will be able to move upwards into a higher consciousness. It requires cooperation. The ancient world is ready to move now. Most of the tribes of the entire world, they're completely in place. But the modern world has still not understood the need for its ancestors, which is the ancient world. Why are our ancestors important to our survival? And further, why is our survival important to our ancestors? In this modern world, most of us live in a synthetic reality. And by synthetic, I mean this: separate from nature in our houses and our cars, with technology shielding us from the outside world and the perils of nature. And because of our pride of technological achievements, we can't imagine why an indigenous person with his or her feet in the dirt and barely able to feed themselves could possibly have any kind of effect upon this modern world except as an annoyance. So let me explain why the Mayan and other tribes are so important to humanity for our very existence. And if you allow this understanding to birth within yourself, then we will go on into the hidden world of the Mayan people, where they will begin to reveal their way of life and their wisdom. nature and the universe, we see that the human body and all known life forms, including planets and suns and all of their relationship of the outer reality, contain a mathematical series of numbers called the Fibonacci sequence. Our human body actually contains these numbers in billions of places, for every cell contains them, not to mention the vast majority of our body proportions do also. Now, to understand exactly why the ancient world is crucial for the modern world to combine with, to combine our knowledge, our wisdom, and everything together, I'm going to talk about sacred geometry. I'm going to use that to be able to explain to you why this is so. Well, the golden mean is a proportion. You can take any line, no matter how long it is, and cut it in a magical place, which makes the golden mean. One part of it will be 1, if you measured that, and the other part will be 1.6180339, which is a number that goes on for infinity. It never ends. And so it's a proportion. And you can see this proportion not only in planets and stars and suns and moons, you can see it in your own body. If you take your hand, for example, and you look at your joints, of your bones, if you divide this length into this length right here, the phi ratio appears, 1.6180339. If you then take that bone and divide into this bone, the phi ratio appears again, and this bone into this bone. You can do it through all of your hand. You can do it through your feet. If you take this hand here and measure that length by your arm bone, there's the golden mean. If you take this one by this one, the golden mean appears again. If you take your foot and divide it by this one, it keeps going. Throughout your body, you're going to find the golden mean in literally billions of places, because every single cell in your body has the golden mean in it. And so obviously, the golden mean is very important to creation. It's probably one of the most important proportions of all the other possibilities of mathematics that there are. But life, you and me, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to make the golden mean. In fact, I don't believe the golden mean exists anywhere in the universe, anywhere. It's only this idea, this ideal proportion, but it doesn't actually exist anywhere. Life doesn't know how to use numbers that never end. It knows how to use whole numbers like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. It knows how to use those, but it doesn't know how to use this other one. And so life figured out this amazing thing, which the Fibonacci, this man, discovered a long time ago. And that is that if you look at this series of numbers, Fibonacci is a series. It begins out with 0, and then it goes to 1, then 1 again, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8, then 13, then 21, then 34, then 55, then 89, and 144. It goes on. And this is the sequence here that continues forever. And if you look at it, all it is you add 1 to 1, you get 2. You add 1 and 2, and you get 3. You add 2 and 3, and you get 5. You add 3 and 5, and you get 8. It's pretty simple. You just add the last number to the middle number, and you get the next number. But if you divide these numbers, if you divide 1 into 1, you get 1, and this number is under this golden mean proportion. If you divide 1 into 2, you get 2, which is over the number, but it's closer to the actual number. Then when you divide 2 into 3, you get 1.5, which is closer to this, but it's under. And then when you divide 3 into 5, you get 1.666667, which is over. And if you watch this, it goes under, then over, then under, then over, then under, and over. And the number keeps getting closer and closer and closer to the golden mean. By the time you get 34 into 55, 1.6176 is getting very close. Now if I could see the nautilus shell image. This is a nautilus shell. It's been cut in half. And what's happening here, these chambers at first are kind of broken and very strange, because this is 1, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8, then 13, 21, 34, 55, 89. These are unfolding. And it says as they get higher, they get closer and closer and closer and closer to this perfect golden mean. You can see it taking place right before your eyes in this shell. And this is what life does in order to get around the fact that it can't use these complex numbers, but it can use single digit numbers only, like 1 and 2 and 3. And life uses this not only in your bodies, not in just, in everything, and everything alive on earth. I don't care what it is, I don't care where it came from, even if it was from another world. This is what it uses to unfold this. Okay, remember what we're talking about here is why does the ancient world and the modern world need each other in order to survive what the Mayan people are talking about. This plant actually can finally come to the place where I can explain this. This is called a sneezeworth plant. It's a strange plant, but it actually grows according to the Fibonacci sequence. When it comes out of the ground, it grows 1 leaf, then 1 more, then it grows 2 leaves, then 5, then 8 leaves, and then 13 flowers. The Fibonacci sequence is obvious. My question to you is, how does this plant know when it's sitting at 5 to grow 8 leaves next? Why not 10 or 12 or some other number? How does it know that? The way it knows that is because the plant looks back at its past, which is 3, and it knows that when it adds its past to its present, it knows where the future is. It knows exactly that the number is 8. And this is the situation that humanity is in right now. It's like we are the modern world is like 5 right now, and it doesn't know where it's going. It's completely disconnected from its past. And when it reconnects with its past, which is what's about to happen on Earth, when it does reconnect with its past, it then remembers the ancient world. And when it adds the ancient world to the modern world, it knows exactly where it's supposed to go. We have to know where our consciousness is going to expand to. And we can't know that without the ancient world. It's essential. It's not an option. We have to. And the ancient world is completely prepared. They're ready. They know they need us. And but we just don't know we need them. The Mayan people have held a knowledge about time, eternal time, and especially the date of December 21st, 2012, that has become a mystery that our modern hearts have longed for more understanding of our own existence. We know this date is important, but most of us don't know what it truly means. So to help bring this date of 2012 to a brighter light so you can understand the bigger picture, we will have to speak about other subjects such as the precession of the equinox and other cycles of time. We will explain these concepts at the right time as they are all interlocked together. If the Maya prophecies are right, and modern science confirms their prophecies, they actually do, what is about to happen is no short of world-changing, with the immediate future about to unfold into no less than a complete transformation of the planet and human consciousness. Anyone out there that cares? The Mayan hope so. As the world academics has studied the Mayan knowledge in their calendar, it has mostly come to the conclusion that 2012 is the year of the great doomsday for humanity. But when fully open to view from the living Mayan perspective, it would be more accurate to call it the birth of a new humanity, or even more clear, the birth of a new consciousness. But this part of the prophecy has been completely overlooked by most of the world. And rather than writing a sequel to The Serpent of Light, this internet program is my way of getting this information out there as soon as possible. A book takes many months to write, then another 9 to 12 months to have it published, and yet another year to a year and a half to get it out into the world's languages. It's way too slow. This reaches you now. Who knows? I may write a sequel anyway. this chapter, we will begin by stating again that the Mayan calendar is the most accurate calendar on Earth. This extreme accuracy has astonished scientists around the world, and partly because of this accuracy, hundreds of millions of people are looking to the Mayan elders to explain this date of 2012 that the world considers to be part of the Mayan prophecy. And further, what we have heard around the world is that on this date of December 21st, 2012, there will be world cataclysms and the world will end. Just so you understand the source of what I'm about to say, I will quickly explain the National Mayan Council of Elders of Guatemala and who they are. There are 440 tribes living in Mexico, Belize, Honduras, and Guatemala, and each of these tribes has one elected elder for that tribe. These 440 elders make up the Mayan Council of Elders centered in Guatemala. Then this council elects one member of the council to preside over the whole council and the Mayan nation, and this is Don Alejandro Cerrillo. He is a 13th generation Mayan shaman. Don Alejandro knows more about the Mayan people and culture than probably anyone on Earth. To be clear, there are other Mayan councils, such as the Grand Itza Mayan Council that I talked about before, associated with Hunzvatsman, also a Mayan priest and shaman, but living in Mexico and in the lowlands. This council is another primary council, but represents mostly the Mexican Maya. I have worked with and performed ceremony with this council also for many years, which I talked about before, and the work that they do is also very important for the world. And then there are smaller councils that are located all around in Belize and Honduras and other places that are mostly regional and meet the needs of people who are usually more remote. The pole would become the South Pole and the opposite. Then about 8 or 9 months ago, these same scientists went back on the internet and made an even stronger warning. They said that the anomalies had become so great that they were expecting the possibility of a magnetic pole shift any minute. What science knows as fact is that about 13,000 years ago, there was a physical pole shift. The pole shift coincided with the other end of where we are right now in the precession of the equinoxes, which would be about 13,000 years ago, exactly on the opposite end of this cycle from where we are right now. They believe that Hudson Bay was the site of the North Pole before this axis shifted. Then a little less than 26,000 years ago, at exactly the very point we happen to be within at this moment in the precession of the equinoxes, the end of time, where we are right now, close to December 21st, 2012, the Earth's physical poles shifted a second time. And if that is not shocking enough, what science knows is that when the Earth's physical axis shifts to a new location, it only takes 20 hours, less than 1 day. This is not the Mayans saying this. This is the scientific world has documented this. You wake up one morning, and in a single day, your world is completely transformed. But back to the magnetic poles. What science has also noticed is that directly before the Earth's physical pole shift, there is always a magnetic pole shift, followed by a period of no magnetic fields. It is shut down completely. What is now only a theory, because of modern man has never been alive modern man anyway, has never witnessed this kind of thing. But this theory is the only theory that comes to really explain how this is possible. If you think about it, the Earth is massive, and that to change the axis of the Earth would require a huge amount of energy. And that's almost impossible. Scientists have never been able to figure this out, of how this is possible. The amount of energy would be just, it would be like the moon hitting the Earth, something of this kind of level. And then, so how can the Earth possibly move its axis somewhere. The amount of energy that would take is just stupendous. It would be as though a moon had hit the Earth, or something of that nature would take place. But it doesn't. The Earth has shifted its axis hundreds and hundreds of times over the last few 100 million years. And so science could never figure this out. They didn't know how this was possible. And then a theory came up recently, not very long ago, 20, 30 years ago, I believe. And the theory was this. There is a crust on the Earth. It's only 20, 30, 40 miles thick. It's not very thick. And underneath that is called the mantle. And there is an upper mantle, which is that connects the crust to the inner part of the Earth. And this upper mantle is made out of rock. However, what the scientists have discovered is that if the magnetic field of the Earth goes to zero, disappears completely, which is what they expect to happen very soon, then after about 2 weeks, this rock formation that is all around the Earth turns to a liquid. It's like oil. And so now the outer crust of the Earth is completely free to spin in any direction it wants. And so it would still take a great amount of energy to move that, but nothing like it would require to move the entire Earth to a new axis. And so, how do I say this? What they believe is going to happen is you now go to the South Pole, and the ice on the South Pole is not perfectly centered. It's off-center. It's a massive amount of ice, miles, about 2.5 miles high or so. It's a huge amount of ice. In fact, if that ice were to melt, it would raise the oceans, the entire world's oceans, I believe, close to 200 feet. It's a lot of water. And so that mass, when the surface of the Earth, the crust of the Earth is now free to rotate, it's off-center. And they believe it will move toward the center of balance, and when it does, the crust moves with it. So the world scientists have now calculated where they believe, they have predicted where they believe the axis of the Earth is going to go, which is almost identical to Edgar Cayce. Interesting enough. Edgar Cayce says it'll be 16 degrees into Russia in this particular place, and the mathematical scientists have calculated about 17 degrees into Russia, into almost exactly the same place. And so if it's true, we don't know, but this is a theory. Nobody has ever seen this happen. At least no modern man has. Now, the shifting of the poles of the axis, however it is to take place, it is this world that the Maya wish to speak to you about, for they know it well. They remember their past, and they remember both of these pole shifts that science has recorded in recent times. According to the Maya, they lived through both of them, and they have been on Earth for at least 26,000 years. Science cannot contradict that because they don't know where they came from and they don't know anything about them. But according to Don Alejandro, in the last pole shift, millions of people died simply because they didn't understand what was happening. If they only knew and understood the situation, they could have easily transformed their experience into something of strength and grace and beauty. But Don Alejandro says that if they don't understand what is occurring and enter into fear, they can easily die. And so he wants to talk to you about this. Don Alejandro also speaks about 30 hours of darkness that happens at this moment when the poles shift. There are some people out there, I'm aware, that speak about 3 days of darkness. The Mayans say, no, it's not 3 days, it's 30 hours. He says that, Don Alejandro says, that everything goes black and one cannot even see the stars at night. Or in other words, we go blind. He says it is during this period that so many people died because of fear that entered into their experience. But he also says that if one were to not worry and simply stay still and just relax, everything returns back, your sight comes back, everything returns to normal, and it only takes 30 hours. So this is another thing that the Mayan people want you to understand is during this change, don't go into fear. It's nothing to be afraid of. But of course, after the pole shift, where you are located on the surface of the earth is now probably completely different relative to the equator than before the shift began. You are now probably living in a new and different environment located on the earth. And this must immediately be evaluated. You've got to figure out where you are, or you could die just from extreme cold or extreme heat. This is another thing he wanted you to know. Now, one piece of the Mayan prophecy that has been told, which the world calls doomsday, but there is something far more important. How do we understand how to be during a physical pole shift and directly afterwards? For the Maya, it is a vibration that comes from within your heart. And this vibration is in perfect resonance to the heart of the earth, the heart of the sun, and the heart of the universe. If we learn to live within this vibration, the living earth will make certain that we extend ourselves into the new world. The secret can only be said in words, but it can only be lived to know the meaning. Words are from the brain, but what we need to remember has nothing to do with the brain. It has to do with the human heart. To use words, and I'll use them, I could say that within the heart is the prophecies of the Mayan people. And so now we can see that there are many cycles within the movements of the earth, and the precession of the equinox is simply one of them that is influenced by all the other cycles. There are others, but you get the image. If we were to look at the end of this little tip up here, like I said, it forms an elliptical pattern. And to blow that up, we would see that there are 2 points that are the most distant points from the center of the circle, which are called the apogee and the perigee. You can hardly say it. And these 2 points will become more and more important as we progress. According to science, in the year 2000, like I said, it takes the Earth 25,771.5 years to make one complete circle. And as it does, it moves through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So this axis actually points to different zodiacal signs as it moves through there. And according to the ancient Hindus and the Tibetans, each time the axis of the Earth moves into a new sign, humanity completely changes in a very specific way. It's a little more complicated than what I'm saying, since the Hindus break up the periods of time in this ellipse into what are called yugas, and they are a little different than the astrological signs themselves. So on December 21st, 2012, the axis of the Earth begins to point into the sign of Aquarius. And according to the ancient world, we begin to rapidly change our consciousness. And according to the Maya, this consciousness change actually begins not necessarily on that specific day, but somewhere within the end of time window, which we are now within. Now let's look at this date of October 24th, 2007, that began the end of time. What was special about this date? There is another indigenous tribe in the United States called the Hopi. The academia believes that this tribe came across the Bering Strait from Russia over to Alaska and then walked down the coast of Canada and eventually migrated to where they are now in northern Arizona. But according to Grandfather Eric, a member of the Hopi Council and the historian for the tribe, he's actually the last living member of this particular part of the tribe, that this is not true. The Hopi did not come in that way. They came from Guatemala. And at that time, when they left from Guatemala, they were Mayan, not Hopi. And the Mayans sent them north for reasons that are still hidden by the Maya and the Hopi. But the fact that the Hopi were originally Maya was acknowledged before me by both tribes. I actually sat and listened to them as they told me this whole thing. And in November of 2007, Grandfather Eric and I were riding in a bus in Guatemala, sitting beside each other and talking. And Grandfather Eric asked me if I saw the blue sphere in the sky on October 24th, 2007. I told him I didn't actually see it, but that my daughter saw it and watched it as it happened. I told him I saw it on the internet, but I didn't see it. He said, could this be the blue star prophecy that was prophesied over 200 years ago by our tribe? You know, I didn't know the answer to that. I wasn't Hopi. But here's what happened. Just before October 24th, 2007, a comet named Holmes came into our solar system, a very small, fast-moving comet. No scientist thought too much of this cosmic event. It wasn't a big deal. But then on October 24th, 2007, this comet exploded and rapidly became a huge blue sphere in the sky, expanding and expanding until it became larger than the sun. It is now recorded as the largest object ever observed in our solar system. And so as I understand it, when Grandfather Eric arrived back home in Hopi land, the Hopi Council met and it was agreed upon that this blue sphere was the blue sphere prophecy of the Hopi. It was rapidly accepted all over the North and South America, and it was also accepted by the Maya as the beginning of the end of time. So this is how this came about, this period of end of time. It wasn't just a random event or some little thing. It was one of the biggest events that ever have occurred in our solar system that we know of ever. There is a second part of this Hopi prophecy with the coming of a red star. The Maya and the Hopi will not discuss this with me, though I know there's been written about in books, but I'm not going to talk about that. But I feel confident that they will in the future. Now, when Don Alejandro was in Sedona, Arizona in July of 2007, he gave part of the Mayan prophecy, one item. And there are many, many more. And he said that, what he said, and this is Mayan prophecy, definitely. He said that there would be a physical pole shift of the Earth's axis sometime within the end of time. Now, this is nothing new. Since Edgar Cayce gave this same prophecy long ago in the 1930s or so, perhaps I should simply say that they agree. And Cayce said that sometime after the winter of 1998, the axis of the Earth would shift to a new location, and he even gave the exact location of where he predicted the axis would move to a very specific point inside of Russia, approximately 16 degrees from where it is now. Considering that Edgar Cayce gave about 12,000 predictions from 1920s to 1970 and was only wrong on one small prediction, he gave a reading while he was in the United States on a man in France and reached his twin brother by mistake. Edgar Cayce's predictions are among the most accurate in the world. And modern science has been intensely watching this possibility of a pole shift. A physical pole shift always begins with a magnetic pole shift first. And science has noted that the magnetic field of the Earth has begun to weaken about 2,000 years ago. And then about 500 years ago, there was a dramatic shift in the strength of the magnetic field as it became weaker and weaker. Then about 40 years ago or so, the magnetic field began to change in ways where the magnetic lines that had been more or less fixed for a long, long time began to wander. This resulted in the whales that used these lines to migrate began to beach themselves on land, something we'd never seen before. The magnetic lines changed from their established positions, and some of them now entered into land masses which never had before. No one had ever seen whales this before, and no one had ever seen the magnetic lines change like this before either. Then the birds began to show up in locations that were not part of their migration patterns, again, because the Earth's magnetic lines were changing. And they were changing because the Earth's magnetic field was getting weaker and weaker. In the 1990s, the astronomical maps of the world, the aeronautical maps of the world used for landing airplanes at the airports had to be changed worldwide because of the old ones were simply not valid anymore. And today the magnetic lines are so unreliable, the magnetic maps have to be checked every single time a plane lands to make sure that their guidance systems are functioning properly. In 2003, a television special came out of Nova, which gave a team of scientists the airtime to begin to talk about the possibility of a magnetic pole shift. These scientists felt that Earth's magnetic poles will shift sometime in the near future and that it was imminent. And then a little less than 2 years ago, the world scientists who observed the Earth's magnetic fields went onto the internet to warn the world. They were given 11 days before the government shut them down and wouldn't let them keep talking, probably because they were afraid that people would be too concerned. What the scientists said was that there were so many anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field that they believed that within 24 hours is a sacred space where creation takes place, and that living within this sacred space changes one's relationship to all of nature and to the universe. The brain has an ego that sees itself separate from the reality and also sees itself as the most important part of the reality. But within the heart, one is not separate from the reality, but becomes one with the reality. There is no separation, and all parts are equal. The minds speak about this constantly, how no human being is greater than any others, that we are all the same. So as you can see, words may describe what we are talking about, but you cannot taste this other way without entering into the sacred space of the heart and feeling and becoming one with this vibration. This is something where we will have to discuss at another time. Perhaps the best way to show you the heart of the Mayan people is to continue with a story. Now we are going to move into the jungles of Guatemala. In June of 2007, I turned over my manuscript for The Serpent of Light over to my publisher, Wiser Publishing. There were many stories of the ceremonies of the Mayan people and other tribes as the interior energies of the earth were altered. In July of 2007, as I said before, Don Alejandro and his wife came to Sedona and asked for a meeting. After Don Alejandro spoke about the pole shift, he also told me that very soon, according to the Mayan calendar at that time, the world was going to enter into the end of time, and certain ceremonies must take place in preparation, and that these ceremonies were marked in the Mayan calendar. This is before the blue sphere ever even appeared. Don Alejandro then began to speak about the Spanish conquistadors and how they had destroyed almost all of the Mayan artifacts and records. And in so doing, the Mayan lost much of their knowledge and their prophecy and their wisdom. But then Don Alejandro spoke of how secret documents were hidden from the conquistadors and that the time had now come to rebuild this knowledge. He then said that according to the Mayan prophecy, the Mayan had to, at this time, begin to reconstruct their knowledge, their experience and wisdom and memories, and that this was the time that this had to be initiated, and that during this time, the world would be watching. Don Alejandro said that the Mayan Council saw this as a group of people coming from all the continents and a vast number of countries around the world, and this group would represent the world. He asked me to find these people, exactly 60 of them, and gather them together in Guatemala City on a specific day in November of that year, 2007. From there, he and the Mayan Council would take them into the jungles of Guatemala to watch the Mayan Council begin to bring their knowledge together again, and also to perform ceremony with this world group. Well, this was easy for me. It took about 60 phone calls, and it was done. They came from 23 countries. In this invited group was Grandfather Eric from the Hopi tribe and 3 elders from the Sierra Nevada Santa Marta of Colombia, South America. One was a Kogi Mamos, and the other was an Arahuacos Mamos and his brother. These two tribes are significant because of the ancient past. Don Alejandro told me that the Maya were originally from Atlantis. I had known this for years, but it was pretty powerful to hear this from his words. And so let's revisit Atlantis for a quick moment to take a look and to see why these other three tribes, the Hopi, the Kogi, and the Arahuacos, were so important. Atlantis was a country that was symbolized by three rings, one ring inside of the other. The outer ring or sphere, and it could also be seen as three spheres. That's another way that Atlantis saw themselves. The outer ring or sphere stood for the people who lived in Atlantis. The middle ring or sphere stood for the priesthood, and they were called Maya. The priesthood were the bridge between the people and the center ring or sphere, who were called the Nacals. It was spelt N-A-K-K-A-L-S and sometimes spelt N-A-C-C-A-L-L-S. The Nacals were the ones who were speaking directly from their sacred space of their hearts and connected directly with the spirit of Mother Earth and beyond. They lived in caves and in special rooms within the pyramids, and they glowed in the dark, and they floated about a few inches off the ground. The Hopi were Maya, and the Maya are Maya, and the Kogi and the Arahuacos Mamos were and are the Nacals, which also include the Wiwas and the Caguamos tribes in Colombia. When Atlantis sank 13,000 years ago, because of the physical pole shift we just mentioned, the Maya jumped into their boats and rode to the Yucatan, not far from where the southwest area of Atlantis existed. And the Nacals rode in their boats to where Santa Marta, Colombia is now, or at least not far from there. All these tribes are all related. And all of these tribes remember what happened. Not only 13,000 years ago, all these tribes remember 26,000 years ago, and even much longer. But this would be the first time since Atlantis sank that all three of these tribes would be together and perform ceremony. It was historical. Even further, according to Grandfather Eric, he was the first Hopi to ever return to Guatemala since they left Guatemala thousands of years ago to head north to the Four Corners area, which we talked about before. The Mayan Council of Elders began by leading us to Lake Atitlan, one of the most sacred lakes of the Mayan people. Our group was met by 25 members of the 440 elders who had been elected to be the ones to begin the remembering of their knowledge. There are other ways the Mayan remember their knowledge besides using their brains, through the use of the 13 crystal skulls, one for each 1,000 years since Atlantis. In a little bit, we'll talk about this in a little bit. It's an extraordinary subject. The world group sat down in a half circle around the 25 Mayan elders as they began with the Mayan glyph for the number 0. They literally began to decipher this glyph as if they had never seen it before. After about an hour and a half, the Mayans had completed the number 0. And then they went to the glyph for the number 1. We watched them as they went, I think, through 1, 0, and 2, I think, and then we got that much in. We spent about a half a day witnessing this event. And then our part was over. The world watched as the Mayans began to recreate their knowledge, and the prophecy was fulfilled. The next morning, the Mayan Council of Elders took us by boat to the far side of Lake Atitlan, to a place where only Mayan ceremony is performed. This was to be a Mayan fire ceremony. The boat ride over these waters was something that every person there will probably remember for the rest of their life. This towering volcano over this lake, perching on the edge of this lake, left one with this ominous feeling that it would explode at any moment. I mean, it had smoke coming out of it. And no wonder the Mayan did the fire ceremony there. On a remote beach, with the sound of the waves lapping endlessly and the deep blue sky forming the heavens above us, Don Alejandro shaped our diverse group into a circle. And in near silence, after an hour-long preparation with each stage of the fire ceremony carefully and geometrically created, This beautiful arrangement of rocks and herbs and candles and other sacred objects was ready for the fire to give life to this ceremony. This was very unusual. I don't know if the fire ceremony had ever been photographed before, and especially in the way that they did this. They actually let us see as they made the geometrical images on the ground, and they explained what each thing was. As they put in each herb, they told us what it meant. As they laid each candle and each object in there, they described exactly what this meant. This may have never been done before, and according to Don Alejandro, this ceremony had not taken place for 13,000 years. The Hopi, the Kogi Mamos, and the Arhuacos Mamos, and the members of the Mayan councils of elders and Don Alejandro and our humble group from all over the world lowered our heads in prayer as the first flames began to reach to the open sky. Though we were all over the world and from many different traditions and cultures, we all entered into our hearts and emerged in prayer with one voice and one heart. We prayed for Mother Earth and for her children, knowing that the earth was about to enter into a very violent stage of evolution, much like childbirth. Each one of us prayed from our hearts for Mother Earth to help all of the world and all life on earth. This ceremony was about 3 hours long, and about 1 hour into it, as I was watching the flames of the fire and listening to the prayers, the Arhuacos man, he was actually had his eyes closed. His arm went up to the sky like this. It caused all of us to look up. We didn't know what he was doing. And there was exactly where he was pointing to in the sky, was a huge eagle just floating over the ceremony, about 100 feet perhaps in the air. It was not moving a single feather and seemed to be fixed in space without moving its wings. It sat there for over 10 minutes. And then the eagle floated off to the side a little ways, a few feet, and continued to watch as we performed a ceremony that had not been performed for a very, very, very long time. The prayers, the songs, the chanting, the dancing, the fire, the smoke all rising to heaven, where hopefully the intentions would be listened to by our mother and our father. Our hearts were wide open. It was incredible, this whole experience. As we climbed into the boats to return to the other side of the lake, I watched. I will probably never forget this. I stood there as all these people got onto the boat, and I watched our uncommon group as they walked down the pier. Religions from the Christianity, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Taoist, Shinto, Hindu, and many more. And all mixed in were the ancient tribes from Atlantis and the land of Lotus. Don Alejandro and the Mayan elders were looking for something. I knew this in my heart. And whatever it was, they must have found it during this ceremony. For they asked us to do another ceremony in a place a long ways away from Lake Atitlan, a place called Tikal, an ancient temple site in Guatemala that represented the crown chakra in the human body, the entryway into higher consciousness. Tikal is a majestic world of temples that once had a city around these primary temples that extended for tens of miles in all directions. It was a huge city that probably housed millions of Maya at one point. I remember looking at an artist description of this city and how it probably looked when it was alive. It looked like a city of the far distant future and space age, not from the past and a people that modern people think is just a modern tribe. I mean, a primitive tribe. The Mayans say that before Atlantis, they came from the stars. And if you were to look at what had been discovered in Tikal in the early 1980s, and you saw this all, you just might begin to believe. We followed Don Alejandro and the Mayan elders up to a high place where ceremony had obviously been performed countless times before. And again, they slowly and tediously began to recreate the structure of the Mayan fire ceremony. This, as before, took over an hour just to construct before even the fire was lit. At first, it seemed to be a repeat of the first ceremony, only slowly the atmosphere began to change. Every time Don Alejandro would raise his arms up to the enormous trees that we were cradled in, the wind would blow through them and around us. It was pretty dramatic. That after about 10 times or so, we began to expect it. He'd put his arms up and we'd just wait for the wind to blow. Then the light began to change. And these beams of light began to cut through the branches and the trees, making it feel like we were in an ancient cathedral in perhaps southern France or somewhere. Tourists began to watch and found that they couldn't leave. It was so mesmerizing. There was a beauty in this ceremony. But I felt that Don Alejandro and the elders were still watching and waiting for something again. I couldn't help it. I felt in my heart, but I couldn't say what it was. I felt that they were looking for signs, like the eagle we talked about before, that could only come from Pachamama, or Mother Earth. No human being could make up these or influence the outcome. It had to come from Mother Earth. Whatever they were, whatever these signs were, they must have appeared, for we were asked to continue. The Mayan elders took us to another temple and remote Mayan temples, one that I had never heard of before. I'd never even seen this before. But once I had seen them, and several of these temples, I couldn't understand, why the world hadn't known about them. They were exquisite and held such a deep power within the earth. But we didn't do anything in these ceremonies. We didn't do any ceremony in these other places. Don Alejandro only wanted us to experience them, or perhaps for the energies of these temples to experience us. Perhaps now is the time to talk about the other way the Maya return their knowledge, experience, and wisdom and memories to the present day from a distant past time that almost seems to be lost forever. They do this not with their brains, but with their hearts, something that the ancient world are experts at, just as we are experts with our brain. What I'm about to tell you did not come from Don Alejandro, but from Humbatzman and the Mexican Yucatan, and my experiences in that land. It is an information that has been held secret until just recently. I can talk about this, but I have to be a little careful in what I say. It was the Mayan grandmother societies that created the crystal skull pathway of knowledge. Much like we do with our computers that contain memory for whatever we want to remember at a later date, so did the crystal skulls. And just as our computers are based on silicon to accomplish this ability to have memory, so are the crystals made of silicon to also contain memory. The first crystal skull came from Atlantis, but the second came from the new Mayan world after the Earth shifted and her physical pole shifted 13,000 years ago. Each crystal skull was created every 1,000 years and contained the memories of the last 1,000 years. Altogether, there are 13 crystal skulls containing the memories of the last 13,000 years. When it was time, every 1,000 years, a Mayan grandmother was chosen, and she would prepare for her destiny. She would begin by having a crystal skull carved into a human skull. It was usually a male shaman who would select the crystal and actually make the actual carving of this human skull. Different types of crystals were used depending upon the time and the need. It could take many years for this crystal skull to be made ready for the final ceremony, which the whole tribe prepared for ceremony for actually 1,000 years. Then the grandmother would select a young man or woman, and one time she selected both together, a man and a woman. To be selected for the crystal skull ceremony was a great honor and a privilege for this young Mayan person or couple. Once the grandmother selected the right person, this person went into a training from the time, usually from when they were a baby, all the way till when they were much, much older, which was then completed when the crystal skull ceremony began. This honored person would study to know as much as possible about everything that the Mayan nation knew at that time. In other words, really over the last 1,000 years. They would also embody the Mayan wisdom, sacred arts of higher knowledge, everything they knew, their memories, everything. They would try to put this all into one person. And this person, in doing this and in learning this, would almost inevitably become a shaman in this training. When the Mayan elders felt that this person was ready, and in conjunction with the Mayan calendar, they would, along with the grandmother, prepare for the sacred crystal skull ceremony. The destiny of both this person and the grandmother were about to be sealed for thousands of years. In the Mayan crystal skull ceremony that was held every 1,000 years, the chosen person and the grandmother would then ingest a very special concoction made of natural herbs, psychedelic plants, and mushrooms. It was made very strong. And the reason was because that this person that was selected and the grandmother would eat this concoction during the ceremony, and this would lead them into a very special experience within their hearts that would soon separate them from their bodies, but not from the earth. In other words, they would die, but they wouldn't go on into the other levels. And with the whole tribe surrounding them in prayer and encouragement, their spirits would leave their bodies and enter into the physical crystal skull. And both of them, the specially selected person and the grandmother, would then take this crystal skull to be their physical body for the next thousands of years until the time that we are now in now, the end of time. Sometime during the end of time, the Maya will perform this final Mayan crystal skull ceremony. I actually just got an email from Huns Batsman 4 days before I arrived here, and I now know that it has not taken place yet, but they will be doing this very soon. This is an amazing ceremony. 13 Mayan shamans, which could be men or women, will receive the spirits of these ancient Mayan souls into their modern-day Mayan bodies, and then remember everything that these spirits remembered, the ancient ones. It's even better than a computer, for it remembers the emotional aspects as well. When this ceremony takes place, the Maya that are living today remember all of the past to the time of Atlantis and even before. And then the Maya will then combine this knowledge and memories with the intellectual process of the 25 Mayan elders that are rewriting Mayan history, and the Mayan nation will then become whole again. They will remember everything, both from their brains and from their hearts. That's their plan, and I think that they will achieve this. And as for us, the rest of the world, a great blessing will occur, for now the Mayan nation is intact, both with the ancient and modern knowledge, and experience, and wisdom and memories at the same time. It's all part of the Mayan prophecy. And you are alive to know the truth of this prophecy. At one point, Don Alejandro simply raised his arms and said, "Okay, now we're going to go to the heart of the Maya land." Whatever that meant. I didn't know. We began to travel, but to where, I didn't have any idea. We had this big modern silver bus, and it was sliding down the freeways and highways and moving through beautiful jungles of the Guatemala. We didn't know where it was going. We drove for hours and hours to this unknown location, and then I just fell asleep. I remembered the rhythm of the wheels slapping on the pavement. That was it. I just began to dream. The next thing I know, suddenly, without any notice, Don Alejandro orders the bus off to the side of the road. I wake up and I look outside, and it was anywhere. It could have been anywhere at all. It was a landscape that could have been really anywhere in Guatemala. Fields of grass on both sides, fenced in by old rusty barbed-wired fences. Totally everyday, nothing exciting, no temples, no nothing. We all got out of the bus, kind of meandering around like a bunch of ants, not knowing what to do or where to go. And then finally, Don Alejandro and the elders walked over to the other side of the road where there was a break in the fencing. It was just, it was like a corridor. There were fences that came in and then went this way, and there was a little space in the middle. If you would have drove by it, you wouldn't even have seen it. And we followed the Maya into this narrow, grassy pathway, and having no idea what was inside of here. We walked for a long ways, about a mile or so, and it became more rocky. And it was clear that we were approaching some kind of low mountains. And the trees began to surround us and became dense. Then the elders sharply turned to the left and entered into another fence field that quickly began to emerge as, really true jungle, and a jungle that obviously somebody had been taking care of. It was just too beautiful. Brightly colored birds flew back and forth. Stepping stones appeared just when you needed them. Everything became moist and green and manicured. It was more hotel-like than something that nature would come up with. But here it was, in the middle of nowhere. Then, surprisingly enough, but not really surprising, there was a beautiful wooden building blocking the entire valley floor that we were moving through. It was a structure built by the Mayans long ago to protect something that we were about to be allowed to enter into. The caves where the Mayan emerged out into this world long before Atlantis. To the Native Americans, it is called the Sipapu, and the Holy of Holies to them. I felt myself become very quiet inside. People were talking and realizing that food was about to be given to us, but the intrigue of what lay on the other side of this open-air restaurant was almost unbearable. The elders sat us down in this beautiful structure with the tropical jungle that was just coming in from all sides, and they gave us a traditional Mayan meal. We had a long journey ahead of us, but we didn't know that. But the elders did. They were just taking care of us. After our lunch, in single file, we began to move into the region behind this building. It slowly sloped upwards as we approached the mountain that was now in front of us. I became even more still inside, and I began to chant within myself as I walked closer and closer to something that I just really didn't understand. And then it happened. A small hole in the side of the mountain appeared, not much bigger than for maybe 2, maybe 3 people at the most to enter in at the same time. It took a while, but eventually all of us were inside the mountain in a long, narrow tunnel. We were now completely inside of Mother Earth. Somewhere in this tunnel, Don Alejandro corralled us all together and talked to us to explain a little bit about this cave. This was a very sacred cave for the Mayan nation. He told us that the cave continued for 28 kilometers, but that we were only going to go in for a few kilometers, and for us to be very careful as it would be getting wet and slippery inside. And this was obvious because it was already getting wet. We continued for just a little bit further, and there before us lay something that I didn't expect at all. The narrow tunnel came to an end in a T, and in front of us was another opening that was huge. It was twice as big as a football field and perhaps 75, maybe 90 feet high. And a piece of the ceiling had fallen in a long time ago, and a beam of light came shooting into the darkness and flooded this enormous cave with this angelic light that made you stop and open your heart. You couldn't help it. It was just instinctive. And then we all climbed down from this narrow cave, down an old ladder to the floor of this new cave, and turned to the left. We really kind of had no choice, and continued as a small creek weaved itself from one side of the cave to the other. We were constantly having to walk through this pure, crisp, pristine water. Most of the time, as we left this shaft of light, we had to use our flashlights to keep from falling into some hidden rocks or cliffs or somewhere. And it was very dark, and most of us just kept talking simply because we wanted to make sure somebody was there. If you turned off your light, it was completely black. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. After a very long and somewhat dangerous journey into Mother Earth, we again came across another place where the ceiling had fallen out of the earth, and it exposed another beam of sunlight to the interior of the cave. It wasn't much, but it was nevertheless, it made it possible for us that we could see. Don Alejandro stopped us, and he said that another ceremony had to be performed here in this place. It was another fire ceremony, but it was completely different than the first two that we had done at Lake Tatalan and Tikal. The fire was in circles. It was the most beautiful of all, as the music and chanting, it just echoed off the walls and within our spirits. Whatever happened within this ceremony was to determine our fate. But I didn't realize this at the time. All I know is that when the ceremony was over, Don Alejandro disappeared. It was one of the elders, Rufino, who asked us to continue into the cave and who then led us deeper into this darkness. It seemed to last forever. Then a third time, we entered into a part of the cave system that had another piece of the ceiling that had fallen in, and a beam of sunlight revealed kind of a roundish room that was huge, but it felt cozy at the same time. What I mean by that is the room actually had these giant rocks in it all over, and when you were sitting in there, you felt like you were in a smaller part of the room. It was these rocks that also made me and others feel kind of peculiar. I looked around to a woman who was standing right next to me, and she appeared to be deeply concerned about what she was seeing. She said to me, "Drunvalo, look at these rocks. They look like animals and birds. These rocks look like they're alive." I looked carefully at one that was near me, and it looked exactly like someone had carved into it a 6-foot iguana. It really did look real, right down to the tiny details. The rock underneath it hid the shape of a gorilla, and while the rock next to it appeared like a young male monkey. On the walls were human faces, Mayan faces that seemed to be emerging right out of the solid rock wall. And everywhere, every rock or wall was alive with something that seemed to be coming straight out of the solid rock. It took my breath away. I didn't know what to say to my friend as it was very unusual, but I felt what she was feeling. This was not normal. This was not normal reality in this place. There was an energy that just permeated the very air we were breathing. Then I noticed that Don Alejandro, who had disappeared before, was sitting on a small granite ledge about 15 feet up the side of one of the cave walls. My first thought was, how did he get up there? Because it just seemed kind of impossible. And it was the moment when our entire group was becoming aware that Don Alejandro was observing us. We all became quiet, waiting for Don Alejandro to speak to us or to say something. Instead, he called for Rufino to climb up to him. He did so, but only so that his head was just level with this rock ledge where Don Alejandro was sitting. And then Don Alejandro reached into this rock ledge that was evidently filled with water and poured a handful of this water over Rufino's head. He did this 3 times. I had no idea what was going on. Then Tata Alejandro asked one of the world group to come up to the rock, and he performed the same ceremony with him. We were all just watching, what was going on. Then he asked each one of us to come up, one at a time. At that moment, I'll never forget this. It was just like simultaneously, we all knew in our hearts what was happening. Don Alejandro was performing a Mayan water ceremony on each of us. We were being initiated in some way, and the energy of the room went deep inside of our hearts of every one of us that was there. Whatever Tato was looking for from us, he must have found it. I started to cry. I couldn't help it. Later, when we were back in a small Guatemalan town, about to have dinner, Don Alejandro, Elizabeth, his wife, and Rufino were sitting at a table together, and they motioned for me to come over and sit with them. Don Alejandro looked into my eyes and said, and this is a quote, "We have asked 2 other groups to come from all over the world to have this ceremony with us to complete our prophecy, but they could never pass the tests that Pachamama presented to them. But I want to tell you now that this group has more than passed all of our expectations. You are the ancestors that we have been waiting for." I didn't know what he meant, but he began to cry, and Rufino also began to cry. And Elizabeth, in her female strength, just looked at me and said, "Thank you. Please let all of the sacred group know that they are the ones that we have been waiting for. And now our prophecy can be completed." This was all too much for me. I couldn't help it. I just began to cry too. I mean, we just became a big table of babies. Now, let's change subjects here. the hidden positive side of the Mayan prophecy. The Mayas see that a long cycle is ending, both their 5,200-year cycle and the precession of the equinoxes at 26,000 years. And they predict that the old world, the one we live within now, is about to disintegrate from natural causes. This means that everything that we now know as normal will dramatically change. It is this part of the Mayan prophecy that the world is focused on. The idea that the poles of the earth are going to shift and humanity will almost be destroyed. It is even be termed, as we said, the doomsday of 2012. But at the same time, exact same time, a new cycle begins. And this cycle is an extraordinary one this time around. I was recently in Colombia, in the Sierra Nevada mountains, living with the Kogi and the Arhuacos Mamas. They believe that there are 9 worlds altogether. And yes, we are in the 4th world. That's what they believe, the same thing. And we will enter the 5th world, just the same way that the Mayans believe. And I said to them, so we still have 5 more worlds to enter to reach the highest level of consciousness. I'll never forget, they turned around, they all looked at me and they said, no, you don't understand, Drunvalo. Everything in life is to achieve balance. The 5th world is in the middle of 4 worlds on either side. It is the perfect balance within the universe. There is no higher world. The Mayas say something similar. They say that the next world, which they call the 6th sun, is a world where humanity reaches a new level of consciousness and that we achieve this new level very, very quickly. As the new cycle begins, which also begins within the end of time, duality consciousness, or good and bad consciousness, disappears, and a unity consciousness becomes normal for humankind. The human ego no longer exists, and we see each other as parts of each other, ourselves. In Maya, when they greet each other, they say, in Lakesh, which literally means, you are another me, and I am another you. This is a hint of the world we're about to enter. Further, the Maya predict that the human quarantine to this solar system that has existed for a long time now will be lifted. And as it is lifted, humanity realizes that the stars and all life everywhere are interconnected in pure consciousness. Our human potential will reach levels that at this moment would seem absolutely impossible for us. But this new humanity will become normal and accepted as the truth, according to the Maya. In other words, the Maya predict that humankind will no longer be involved in finance, politics, war, food, oil, etc., and that we will become one with the Creator and be able to manifest all things. We become co-creators along with the Creator. If this is true, then don't worry when you watch the movie 2012 showing the earth being destroyed. They are only showing part of the Mayan prophecy. Remember this time, and remember the Maya, and know that what is coming is beautiful and sacred, something to celebrate and be grateful for. As Mara Baba once said, don't worry, be happy. This is definitely the best approach for life at this time. Breathe from your heart. Life is not what it seems, not even close to what most of our parents believed to be true. We live in a dream that our mind is crystallized into what we call reality. We believe it is fixed and can only change according to the laws of physics. The Maya believe you will soon know a part of yourself that is so ancient that it goes beyond the stars and planets as fixed worlds. They are just a dream also, and just like a dream upon awakening, you realize that it was nothing but light, or better still, nothing but pure consciousness. Is it time for you to remember who you really are, which is far beyond a normal human being? In Lakesh. I'd like to, after reading some of them, and I can't even read all of them, I'll do my best to try to answer these. There's a lot of questions here that have nothing to do with what we're talking about today, and I can't answer any of those questions now. There isn't time. First thing I'd like to say is to, from reading these, is to begin by saying that these questions are coming from all over the world. I mean, everywhere. And we all have different ideas about spirituality and life and these kinds of transitions. This is clear to me as I move around the world that not everybody agrees with me, and I don't agree with everyone else, and I'm simply giving you my understanding of what the Mayans are saying. I'm doing this for the Mayan people, and it's simply one approach to all of this, and there are others. I do understand this. There is no reason to be concerned about this, even though it's easy to say. Yes, this is a big event if this is true. And I do believe this is true, but we will find out. Maybe it isn't true. Maybe it's just fantasy. But we will find out. We don't have to wait a very long time. It's clear from some of the questions that I guess I wasn't very clear in there. One of the questions was from Maz from Canada, who says, first 2007, then 2012, and now you say as late as 2015. A skeptic might say you are backpedaling on very specific questions that doesn't appear to be taking place. I thought I was clear that what the Mayans are saying is that there is a window from 2007 to 2015, and that their belief is that these things will begin sometime in that window, not on a specific date, and especially probably not on the actual date of when the calendars reach zero, which is on December 21st, 2012. One of the things that I see over and over and over here is how should we be during this time? Should we move away from the coastline? Should we put food in the ground and all these kinds of things and prepare on a physical level? I don't really believe that any physical preparation is going to help anybody in this. This is an inward preparation that is necessary. And sure, you can do those things if you feel you want to. But really, what's necessary is a change within our essence inside of ourselves. In a real simple way, it's moving from polarity consciousness into unity consciousness. This is what we need to do. And that is really the only thing that I see that we need to do, is to step back from the way that we have been for the last 13,000 years and into the way that we are about to be, or once were a long time ago, before the fall. And so it is exactly how to do that. Different spiritual traditions have different ideas about this all over the world, whether it's Tibetans or Hindus, Sufis, Taoists. The ideas are different in that. You should follow your heart and that which you already believe in. In fact, if you're a materialistic person, forget it all and just continue making money. That is, if that works for you, that works for you. I really believe that every single last person alive is going to be fine through all of this, one way or the other. There's no reason for fear in this. I don't feel any fear. I'm not concerned. In fact, I feel excitement, and that we are coming to the end of these cycles, and that the pain of thousands of years is about to be over with, and that a new way of existing is about to begin for humanity. This is a time of great beauty. Nothing to be concerned about on those kinds of levels. There's another question here from Rito from Germany, who says, thank you for the availability of this live show. Many shamans tell about the importance of the 15th of August 2009 till the 20th of July 2010, that it's an intense energy time. Yes, I have been hearing this from not only from the Mayans, but from tribes all over the world, as far away as New Zealand, and from practically everywhere. And whether or not it's true, we will find out very soon, because August 15th is just next month. There is something that I believe will begin directly after that time. I'm heading for New Zealand with the Waitaha and the Maori, And we are beginning on August 8th and will continue through until August 19th. And that there are ceremonies that are beginning at that time that will indicate that it would, if what they say, which I cannot repeat on this air right now, if what they say is true, then we are, something incredible is about to happen as early as next month. But, and all the way back into May, June, and July of 2010, simply look into the astrological, look into the stars. You can see it for yourself, that there is an intense period approaching us. Whether or not that's the time, I don't know. And the Mayans will not say. And so, again, follow your heart. Believe in yourself. Trust in yourself. And move in any way you know how from polarity consciousness into unity consciousness. The sacred place of the heart, from my traditions and what I know, this is the approach. To move from the brain into the heart. And the brain is polarity consciousness, the heart is unity consciousness. And to find a way to move into that level of consciousness so that you can reconnect your own self with yourself, because we have been separated from ourselves for some time. This is what I believe here. And I'm just one person. I'm not that important. You know, I happen to be standing here talking to you, but there are many teachers all over the world that are saying many things. And this one is Nicola from Sweden, and I'm just picking them out. She says, is physical death necessary to reach into the fourth dimension? Which is, the fourth dimension is one of the stepping stones into what the Mayans are speaking about, into the higher levels of consciousness. One way or another, from all of the spiritual traditions that I'm aware of, physical death or resurrection or ascension is what we are talking about here. Does it make any difference which one? I don't believe so personally. At this stage of the game right now, whether you die or you go through resurrection or you go through ascension is not going to matter. You still end up in exactly the same place, the same precise level within the fourth dimension. And this is where I believe that consciousness is going to rapidly change. And from there, we go on to levels that it's probably not appropriate to talk about right now. Let me grab some more, and we'll see where it says. She says, well, I think I answered this, but this is Anna out of Russia, and she says, what do you think about the possibility of an average man to survive during 2012 transition? Again, it's the same thing. Every single last person from my tradition says that we will all make it through. Some a little easier, some a little harder, but we all make it through. What we're about to go through is just almost exactly like childbirth. During childbirth, there's you might see a lot of pain taking place in the mother. You see blood from if somebody had never seen childbirth before, you might say, wow, this is a violent thing taking place. But the higher level of that is a new baby comes out into the world, a new birth begins. And we're in that same position right now. We are about to be born onto a new level of existence, a level of existence that does not have polarity within it. No more judging, no more pain, no more death, no more a lot of things. And this is a positive step into from human consciousness. We've been here for 13,000 years, and we're about to leave. And so I'll keep saying it, it's not a time of fear, it's a time of celebration. So many of these questions are around the material world. Grintomi, which is out of Hungary, says, it doesn't make any sense to go ahead in the material world. I think this is a very important question. We have a responsibility to life, to all life everywhere, to God that lives within us, to do the very best we can in life. And every minute, every second, every nanosecond that we're alive gives us the opportunity to come closer to unity and to oneness, and to understand and live the unity of life. And so, yes, it does. We continue to pay our bills. We continue to do everything just as though nothing was going on those kind of levels, so that we can continue with our lives, so that as much time as possible, the amount of time that God has allotted us is lived fully and completely. And that last breath that we take, whether we die normally and has nothing to do with this, or this triggers that for us, we will be prepared. Again, it's all about believing in yourself and trusting in yourself and knowing the unity of all life everywhere. Yes, this is a big step in the unfoldment of human consciousness, if the Mayans are correct, and Edgar Cayce is correct, and the scientists of the world are correct. But it's easy. You can do this. We can all do this. But the reason I'm here, though, is just to get you aware that something huge is happening on Earth. It's not life is business as usual. It's a big thing, and we need to prepare inwardly. I said this just a little while ago. We need to prepare inwardly. It doesn't mean you go out and you quit your job and you stop everything. It means that in your inner life, perhaps television is not the most important thing right now, even though that's what you're watching. That a deep inner study of who you truly are, and what life is really about, that now is the time to begin to search in a very deep way, not to just forget it. But if that's your journey, okay, that's perfect too. Because right now, like I said, every last person is going to find their way through all of this. But you do have a responsibility to life everywhere. Well, so many of these questions are the same thing over and over in different ways. This one is Maria. I'm not even sure what country she's from, but she's talking about, well, should we build straw bale houses or get rid of our car or live off the grid? Well, all these things might be good for the earth, but again, it comes back to an inner change is what we're about to get into. Meditation is the key, going within, understanding, remembering who you really are, and trusting in yourself. Well, this person is asking about the Waitaha prophecy out of New Zealand. I'm sorry, I can't talk about that right now. I have given my word to the Waitaha that I would not do this publicly. But the Waitaha prophecy is very, very similar. I can skirt around it a little bit. They say that next month, beginning in the next month, is an enormous shift in energy. So enormous that most people would never believe it. Whether it happens, we'll have to wait till next month to find out. But the Waitaha are very old. Where the Maya and the Hopi and the Kogi and the Arwakos and the Kanguamos and the Wiwas are from Atlantis, the Waitaha are from Lemuria, which is prior to Atlantis, and a lot older. And the Waitaha are a very important part of the ancient world, connecting with the modern world, which is exactly what they are doing. They are asking us to come in there with over 100 people to begin to do ceremony that they also haven't done in thousands and thousands of years. And they are also preparing in a sacred, spiritual way, an inner way, for the changes that they know are about to happen, which is very similar to what we have just been talking about through the Maya, except they are very, very specific. and we'll just have to see. If they give me permission to talk about their prophecies, then I will do that. But until I get permission, I can't do it. This is one from Tan from Malaysia, who says, here's my question. On December 21st, 2012, I'm getting a lot of collaboration evidence of something happening at that specific point, as referenced by the I Ching reaching zero from Terence McKenna and the looking glass technology and operability from David Wilcox. This is the precise date. What does the Mayans say about this time according to them, if indeed the change does happen from this date? Well, he might have sent this in before listening to the whole broadcast, I'm not sure. But yes, that date is precise. December 21st is exactly when the cycles line up and all these things happen. That can be seen even from the NASA understanding of all of these, of the calendars and everything. Again, it's not just the indigenous people, it's science also can see that this is a very incredibly precise moment in time. But the Mayans, again, I'll reiterate, they are saying that this that it is not, even though the cycles end exactly at that time, and the I Ching does come to zero except at that time, that the actual change in consciousness and the movement of events that begin with the magnetic poles and the physical poles shifting, it is the consciousness change that occurs directly after that, or during that possibly, that this is what is important. And exactly how that happens, I don't know, and neither do the Mayans, evidently. Don Alejandro was very clear about this. He said that they cannot predict at this point the precise moment when this huge change will occur, but that it is more than likely not going to occur on December 21st, 2012. It'll happen sometime in the window between 2007 and 2015. Somewhere in there is when this will occur. So it may come December 21st, 2012, nothing happens, because it might happen afterwards, according to the Maya. It could happen as late as 3 years afterwards. But they are convinced, the Waitaha are convinced, the Aboriginals in Australia, the Zulu in Africa, the Hopi and tribes all over the world that I'm familiar with, they are all convinced that this is going to happen. We have reached the end of this cycle, and we are going to move up into a new level of consciousness. This is a great thing. We should be celebrating. But I don't have a name on this one. And I don't even know where it's coming from. It just says, Dear Drunvalo, all enlightened beings have said that truth is beyond these transient things, to move beyond the dual world and oneness, that ceremony, ritual, sacrifice, phenomena, siddhas, crystals, etc., however fascinating, are not it. Yes, I understand that. And that has been a problem throughout India in terms of the siddhas and the powers and the human potential of what takes place. But ceremony, when I'm talking about ceremony as it is presented through the Mayan people and some of the other tribes, it is not about the crystals or the fire or the objects that they are using at those times. You could throw those things away. They could sit there with their eyes closed and use nothing. It is, again, it is about a consciousness change occurring within humanity at this time. And the truth is the only thing that really matters. And that truth is about to unfold on earth. I'm just here out of love for you and for all life everywhere, and trying to get you excited to begin to search within yourself at this time. We're so close to the end of this cycle, And again, those things that you saw on the screen and the crystals and the crystal skulls and all that stuff was related to the Mayan experience. But it's true. What you just said there, whoever you were, though I don't have the name, I'm sorry, I agree with you on that. And so I think that from looking at these, this is about all I can say at this time. I hope that you understand that that this was not intended to trigger you into fear or for you to begin to do things that are crazy in the sense of stopping your jobs and all these kinds of things. No, continue with your life. This is the most important thing. You don't know if this is going to happen, and I don't either. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But it's just like anything else. We have made predictions all the time where we predict that the sun will come up at a very specific moment tomorrow morning. That is a prediction. That is not necessarily going to happen. But because it's happened so many times before, we could say, yep, it's going to come up at 5:32 tomorrow morning, and it does. Well, the Mayans have seen this happen twice before. They know we're back at this moment, and they know the kinds of changes that have occurred before. And so we're just here to kind of wake you up out of your sleep and for you to get serious about inner meditation and inner work, because this is more than likely the sun is going to rise, and this cycle is going to begin. So I guess I'm going to end this at this time. For some of you who may be interested in actually watching these ceremonies of the Mayans more carefully, and this is the only reason we've done this, is because we have put this, the entire ceremonies and everything that took place in Guatemala was put onto a DVD at the request of the Mayans, which was amazing to me because they usually never allow you to film anything. But this DVD, The Ancient Wisdom of the Maya, you can go on to www.onelotus, L-O-T-U-S, it's onelotus.net, and on there you can purchase this if you wish, if you're interested in just watching what actually happened in Guatemala. And there was another thing, I forgot what it was. Oh yes, I remember. This is actually in two parts. This first part, we simply talked about the Mayan prophecy and what they are saying and the timing of the cycles and all these other kinds of things. But there is something else that's been going on for over 13,000 years on Earth, and also associated with the ancient tribes and cultures of the world, that is incredible and amazing and very, very positive that is occurring on Earth right now. And we will be giving another broadcast, which is called The Birth of a New Humanity. And when you see this, you'll begin to see the beauty that is unfolding around us at this moment. And so I understand that this first broadcast is a little shaky in a way, but when you see this one, you'll really begin to understand that life is beautiful, and we live in the most incredible time, and so with that, I'm going to say goodbye. I love you. I wish us all the best in the changes that are about to come. And Lakesh.